Welcome to Staring into the Abyss. I'm your host, Richard Gerlach. With me, as always, is Matt Brandenburg.
Hey, everybody.
Vitlemy Mist.
Hey, guys.
And you, the listener. How's everyone doing
today? Doing just magical.
I feel like I need to make another announcement from last week's episode. We've mentioned that Michael Patrick Hicks has left the podcast, but I still want to give Matt credit for his editing duties. That's for the last 2 weeks. He's had a lot of bullshit he's had to edit together, and the episodes have come out great. So I just want to give Matt some credit for his editing abilities.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you guys missed our last week. I was having some major robot hearing issues, and unfortunately, you don't get to hear the amazing outtakes. Maybe one day. Maybe
one day we'll release the raw audio and see what happens.
Oh God! It would be an adventure.
We should have like a blooper reel or something like that.
Yes. That'd be awesome. If people know any bloopers or any goofy talks that we've done, let me know.
And
I mean, I actually know one that kind of went off track, but I'm not gonna discuss it again because we might go off track again. It had to do with a certain book that Matt was reading.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, that was a tough one to speak about.
By the way, by the time you finished it,
it was really good.
I'm glad you enjoyed Cisco's member then.
Took it all in.
It wasn't just a tip. It went straight through.
Well, this week we have no innuendo for our story, but we'll be discussing Sweetgrass Blood by Eden Royce, which you can find on nightmaremagazine.com.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
no excuses. You can read this for free.
Yeah. And it is a interesting story. I think we'll have a good discussion based out of it.
I think this might go into philosophical territory.
Yeah, it's going to be a more like cerebral discussion for us.
Yeah. So we'll get all our goofiness out of the way first.
Yeah. Well, speaking of getting our goofiness out of the way first, I finished 3 books last week.
Holy shit!
Crap.
Yeah, like
damn, you are really good with your students.
I also finished an audiobook last week too.
Wow.
Okay.
I think I'm really, and I recommend everything that I read this week. So I mean, I'm just gonna kind of go down the list and spend a few minutes on each one.
Sounds good.
So I started off the week and I wanted to read Incarnate by Steve Stred.
Okay.
I've been on the list for a while, and I figure, like, I'll go give it a read. I wanted something kind of like in the Satanic Panic possession era. And Incarnate, honestly, is one of the best horror books I've read so far, like, this year, even including last year.
Oh, wow.
It's not super, like, gory or anything, but pretty much, like, the premise is, it's the summer of 1976, and our main character is Ryan, who I wanted to die the entire time because he hates the Bee Gees, and that's blasphemy. Like, that's a death sentence right there if you hate the Bee Gees. I'm joking. But he just turned 13. He's really into, like, Kiss and, like, the 70s heavy metal stuff.
Well, that explains the hate.
Yeah. And they're going to their like great grandparents' house, which is in the Canadian wilderness. And 100 years prior, Ryan's great grandmother or great great grandmother was conducting a seance to contact a neighbor's dead relative. And the neighbors in question were never seen again after the seance. And there's rumors of this house being haunted, and Ryan's really cool to spend the summer in a haunted house. And they get to the house, and weird things start happening. Like there's these eyes that are fire red that are watching them from a distance through the windows.
Nice.
Blood starts dripping from the walls, and it just gets a little fucky from there.
It's a good description.
And it is a blast. Like, I legit was having trouble sleeping one night, so I started reading this at like 11 o'clock or so. I couldn't fall asleep until I had finished the book.
Wow.
Okay.
Like, I read the whole thing, and then it was like 1:30 and I fell asleep. Highly recommend Incarnate by Steve Stred.
I need to check out his books, definitely.
Yeah. When did this one come out?
It came out last year.
Okay.
It came out October 4th last year.
All right, nice.
And it's like 180 pages. It's a quick read, and yeah, like there's only one main criticism I have, but it's kind of a spoiler, so I'm not going to. Okay. But besides that, like, I gave the book a 5 out of 5. I had a blast with it. A really good gut punch of an ending. And Steve's definitely one of the better people working in the business right now, I think, especially in the indie publishing scene. He doesn't get enough love. I think he deserves more love for his work.
Yeah, and it seems like he's been pumping them out, because is Mastodon out, or did that?
Yeah, I think it's out in March.
In March, okay.
I thought Mastodon's out already.
Oh, or maybe, yeah. I'm getting so much fucked up with so many dates because so many people are publishing a lot of stuff, and I'm like, I can't keep up.
Right.
Like it might have to come to this that I might need to put like an Excel spreadsheet for this.
Yeah.
And I hate Excel, so it's gonna be like my last option.
Yeah, Mastodon came out January 10th.
Oh shit. Okay.
So he had this. What was it called? Incarnate.
It's called Incarnate. Invested.
Okay, it's Steve, if you're listening to this, please write a book called Invested.
I mean, honestly, the sequel to Incarnate could be called Invested, or Infested could be another.
Yeah.
I almost said that. My head thought Infested. My words said Invested. Neither of them were correct. But you said that came out in October. Mastodon came out in January. He's just pumping them out.
He is pumping them out.
So he needs to give us an Excel spreadsheet of all his.
Yes. And tips on how to fucking do it so fast, you guys.
Right?
Yeah. And after that, I decided I want to go kind of old school. And I read the author's preferred edition of Terminal.
Nice.
Oh, by Brian Keene, right?
Yes. Which was a very good book. Extremely good. I think it's one of Keene's best books.
Oh.
It's very early 2000s. You can take that as you will.
Oh yeah, I might need a little bit of a definition on what you would define a little 2000s.
A lot of Gangnam Style? Was that early 2000s?
Yeah.
Gangnam Style was late 2000s, man.
I don't know my time. Like, a lot of garage rock.
There's a lot of like the 90s till early 2000s rap references.
Okay.
So a lot of Eminem?
Yeah.
There's some Eminem. The main character is referred to as a wigger, which is a term that
oh my god,
used even heard since high school.
Yes.
And he doesn't do as much anymore, but like there's this like black gangster character that drops the N-word a few times.
Gotcha.
It's which none of it's like super hateful or anything, but it's kind of like it's like when you're reading a book from the 80s, you kind of expect some like casual misogyny.
Yeah.
Here you're going to expect some like ignorance from how like cultures can like people can view each other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like no one would use these same terms anymore writing, but I feel like he was authentic to the original manuscript, which is an incredibly intense story.
I don't know much about this.
No, me neither.
So I'll give us both the plot and like the backstory of what kind of happened with Terminal. But the plot follows this guy named Tommy, I should say, who is 25, and he doesn't have health insurance, and he's working 35 hours at the mill because the mill has people work 40 hours a week, then the mill has to pay for health insurance. So they're trying to skim money. So our characters are very poor. And he has a wife and a son, and he's doing everything he can to provide for his family. And he's been getting sick. So he goes to see the doctor with no health insurance, and the doctor tells him that he has terminal cancer and that there's nothing he can do. And if he had insurance, he would have been able to see the doctor once he started getting sick. And they probably could have done something. But by this point, it's too late. He has 1 month to a year left to live, and the next day he loses his job. The mill lays off everybody that's been working there for 6 or less years. So he's going to be dying. He has no money. He lost his job. So he's going to rob a bank. That's his plan.
All right.
So it's like a low-grade version of Breaking Bad.
Him and his friends get together. His friend John and his friend Sherm. And they get together to come up with a plan to rob a bank so he can leave his family money for when he dies.
This is reminding me of a movie that I watched. I can't remember. It was about these 3 old men who decide to rob a bank.
Yes, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called, but I really like that movie.
Is that the one with and it's famous old actors?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Going in Style?
Yes. Yeah, I think it was called that. I don't know.
Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
That's the one.
So a little backstory of this novel is it's actually Brian's second novel. He wrote it after The Rising, and there was a publisher that I forget which publisher it was, but they had just begun to open up a line that the person who was working for the head of this department wanted to make the new Abyss. He wanted to publish transgressive horror stuff to do what Abyss was doing back in the 90s. And so he bought Brian's book Terminal, and Terminal, spoiler alert for people who care, has a paranormal turn at the end.
I was wondering.
There's a heavy paranormal shift about 3/4 of the way through the book. And I believe it's still in the original manuscript, but one of the characters, so when they're doing the bank robbery, one of the characters is a little boy named Benji. And Benji can heal people through his touch.
Oh.
If you're sick, if you're shot, if you're having a heart attack, Benji can put his hands on the area that's affecting you and can heal you. In the original manuscript, Benji is the second coming of Christ. They had him change that in the version that came out in 2002.
Okay.
And they had him tone down Benji's importance. So this is kind of his original vision of what was supposed to be printed.
Oh, nice.
And it's a really fucking good book. Again, I was engaged the entire time. I couldn't put it down. It just steamrolls forward, and it gets intense. One of the characters might be possessed by demons. It has.
Wait, demons as in plural?
Yes.
Damn.
It has some ties to Brian Keene's greater mythos as well.
I was gonna ask.
I mean, all of his books do, and sometimes it's something silly, but sometimes this one, especially with the whole Benji revelation of what's supposed to be, has a different meaning in Keene's mythos now.
Huh.
Also, speaking of Keene, I read The Seven.
Nice.
Also by Brian Keene.
You're going on a Keene kick.
Yeah.
I am. And The Seven is Keene's Dark Tower.
Hey.
It's pretty much what the concept is that the 13, which are the 13 entities or antagonists of Keene's universe, have band together, and they're trying to destroy every possible multiverse. Just destroying everything. Yeah. And our characters in the book are all classic Keene characters. So you have Frankie from the Rising books. You have what's his face, the old guy from Earthworm Gods.
Yes.
He's one of the main characters in this. You have Tony, who's kind of like Keene's mafioso character that I like to use a lot. He is a main character here. The Exit's a main character here. Don Bloom, which is in a few of his short stories, is a main character. And they team up with Lucifer.
Okay.
And their mission is they have to kill the 13 and save the multiverse.
Pretty simple.
So book one kind of follows them the book one follows them all being saved from death, and then kind of like their training to become weapons, essentially, to be able to stand off against the 13. And then they kind of go to action, where they face off directly against one of the 13, and they find themselves in the Rising world after the Rising stuff has ended. And the next entities coming to take over once Ob is done.
Crazy.
And it's very Keene-like. I'd say it's more of like a horror action vibe.
Yeah.
With some dark fantasy elements. But like where the Dark Tower is like strictly dark fantasy, this is more of like action pulp horror.
Nice. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
It is. I wouldn't really recommend reading it unless you've read like enough Keene to kind of understand his mythos.
Yeah.
It's a really bad, like, oh, I have read Brian Keene before. Let me try this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like,
I don't think it would be a good idea for me to do it.
Yeah.
No. I mean, even me, like, I haven't read all the stories that he suggests you read before watching it, but reading it. But I've read enough to like kind of know what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. Like, I had a blast with it. I busted out my Thunderstorm hardcover and I blew through the thing in a few hours.
Nice.
That sounds awesome.
And then the last thing for me, and then I'm actually done. I got no TV in this week. Besides Gemstones. The one more thing, and then I'm done, is I actually just finished yesterday The Night Trade by Barry Eisler. And I think I've talked about
that one.
Eisler here before. Maybe he's not really a horror writer, but like, if you want like a good thriller, Barry Eisler is one of the best at it. The Night Trade is his second book in the Livia Alone series. So Livia Alone is like, she's a newer character for his stuff, but she was a child in Thailand, and her parents sold her off to try to make some money, and she was sold to be a child sex slave. And she was able to escape that life, and now she is a black belt in Taekwondo, and she is a sex crimes police officer who also kind of moonlights as a vigilante serial killer when she hunts down released rapists and murders them.
That sounds amazing.
And the first book kind of follows her coming across a lead that connects her to her sister, and her trying to find out like what happened to her sister after they got to America. And the first book kind of goes back and forth between Livia growing up and then her as an adult trying to find her sister. And it's very harrowing, a lot of the stuff that this character goes through. But she's also like a very badass character too. The second book follows Livia a few months after the first book is over, when she's contacted by a government agent who knows about her past and her how much she hates and goes after child sex trafficking, and hires her to operate a sting operation in Thailand. And she uses this to track down the men who were involved in her abduction and kill them.
And sounds awesome.
She also meets Dox, who's another Eisler character. Dox is short for unorthodox, who's this Texan ex-military guy who freelances as a sniper hitman. And him and Livia have the same target, so they end up working together to fully extract out both of their revenge plans of what they want to get done.
That sounds intense.
Yeah.
It's really intense. It's really good. Barry's a really great like thriller writer. If you want like fast-paced thrillers with unique characters, like everything I listen to his audiobooks, and they've all been great so far. Right now, I am on the Killing Collective, the Killer Collective, which is like his Avengers, where he has all of his characters teamed up together.
Wow. Like that's the thing apparently, is to have a bunch of characters all tied together.
Yeah. So I mean, so far, like the Night Trade was great. If you haven't, like, I would say if you're a Jack Ketchum fan and you want something serious, or if you want a thriller with like the cold seriousness of Jack Ketchum, I would definitely recommend Barry Eisler stuff. That being said, it's not for the faint of heart. Especially the Olivia Lone stuff is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
I'll put that out there straight out. But that being said, they are very compelling stories. I think Livia is my favorite character of his. John Rain's pretty cool too. John Rain's his main character, who's like a hitman who specializes in making deaths look like accidents.
Neat.
Like someone who's died of natural causes. He's like Barry Eisler's main character. But then he has all these other side characters too. But that's pretty much all I did this week, because I did a lot of writing and I finished all those books and audiobooks.
Well, that's impressive.
I made good use of my vacation.
Good.
Yeah, you did.
But
like it.
What about you, Matt?
Well, all right. So
my vacation.
I'm a little jealous of your vacation. Because all I did was finish stuff that we've already talked about. So like,
hey, you got it done though.
It's right, So I did finish Nightmare Alley, William Lindsay Gresham, which I already kind of talked
Is it the same ending as like in the movie?
So it is and it isn't. Like it. So instead, what happens in this is, and I think I talked a little bit about last week, is he does start up a church, this spiritualist church, to get people. He does end up getting this big business guy. So just like the movie, they get what's his name, and so he's doing this thing, and that's sort of the same concept of this business guy. I think it's Ezra Golding in the book. I'm not sure if that's the same character in the movie, but Ezra, his girlfriend way back in, I don't know, high school, college, was pregnant, and then she ended up dying. So he wants Stan to bring her back, or at least bring her ghost back to him. So it's sort of that same idea. And he's coming up with Stan's coming up with all these ways, and of course it's still him bringing Molly in to be the ghost. Though in this one, a little darker, the plan basically is to allow Ezra to have sex with Molly as the ghost, and Stan's like, "Oh, it'll be fine. This, we'll do this, and then we'll be set." I was like, "Well, this is a bit different." And I understand why they might have taken that out, because I just a little step too far. So that's different. And then the same thing, the doctor does end up kind of double crossing him, but it's weird. And I had this problem too with the movie, in which it's never really clear 100% why she's double crossing him, other than just fulfilling his prophecy of everybody's trying to get one up on everybody else. So I don't know if I needed a full explanation, but just something would have helped, just to make that seem a little bit more intense instead of just it happening. And then, yeah, same thing. He ends up running, and we spend a lot more time on him running before he ends his time at the carnival. So it's just a little bit more of him trying to get back up on his feet, and it not working for him. And then, yes, then it ends the same. He goes to the carnival owner, and the owner pulls out the old geek bit. So I like that. I'm not 100% certain which I liked more, because the thing that I liked that Del Toro did in the movie that's not really done in here to a point is Del Toro really pointed out the fact that Stan wasn't drinking up until a point, and then that when Kate Blanchett gets him to drink, that's when the trouble happens. In the book, it's sorta, you kind of have that idea. Like he turns down a drink a couple of times, but then it just seems like he's just drinking like normal. So his ultimate fall to becoming a geek isn't as big. That's like, when you're watching the movie, that's like that big fall of him like just taking that plunge into becoming a geek, where in the book you see what alcohol does to him and you see his downfall, but it doesn't have that intensity of what you saw in the Del Toro movie. So I don't know. It was good. I not sure which one I liked better. So
did you learn a lot about carnies?
I did. Actually, what you learn more about is how spiritualists worked and what they did to like trick people into believing that they were talking to spirits. There's so much on, especially when he had this house that he's doing his church in, all the little tricks and things he has built into this house to make the spirits seem to be real. It was just amazing how much he described that and where that all comes from. And it was just like, that part was really cool. The Carney stuff, of course, was fun, but what's more interesting is what spiritualists, like how they put stuff like things in the floor so they could step on them a certain way to set out sounds. And and so that was, and what they like would keep even in things such as like the curtains in the windows. That was really interesting. The other part that I thought was hilarious, and it was kind of it would have been really funny if Del Toro put in the movie, though he sort of did. So there's a scene in the movie with with the lie detector test, and the big businessman Ezra something or other wants him, to prove that he's telling the truth. Well, in the book, he has this like atomic scale that will, it's cemented in the floor, so there's no way to vibrate it, and there's nothing in it, and it can measure hair. A single hair will set the scales off, and they put lights in it, so if one of the scales move, it'll turn the lights on, and that's what they want Stan. If Stan can get a ghost or something to push that scale down, then that will prove that he's actually got these powers. And the way Stan does it is with fleas, and it is hilarious. I just was like totally dying, because the way Grisham in this book, the way he does a lot of it is you get the actual event, so whatever the spirit thing is or whatever the Carney thing is, and then after you kind of see behind the curtain and how he did it. So for this one, he gets a cat. You don't know what he's doing with this cat, and then half an hour later he comes out and he's got a pencil, and you're like, okay. And then he has the business people take the glass off the scale so he can look at it, and he's pointing with the pencil, and you're like, oh, okay, I wonder what's in this pencil. And then you find out later that he had put a bunch of fleas in this pencil and like sprayed them into this thing. It's like, what the hell? So anyway, yeah, that was entertaining. The other thing I finished, which people are possibly sick of hearing us talk about, but I did finish Peacemaker.
Peacemaker.
No one can be sick of that. It was awesome.
It was a good show.
It was really good. The ending was great. It was perfect. It was just a blast.
I have a question.
I'm ready.
Do you really want to taste it?
I actually went through on the other day, and you could probably get elsewhere, but YouTube has like 50 songs that are all from the show, and I did end up listening to that all day. It's a lot of glorious 80s hair band metal. It was amazing.
I think I might actually just find it on my like on Spotify and just listen to it on work tomorrow.
Oh, you should. It's a blast. I mean, it's all from the show, so you're not like hearing anything new, but it was just a blast to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Steel Panther song on that show.
The Witch Panther song?
Steel Panther.
Steel Panther, yeah. And Wigwam.
And Wigwam, yep. Just so much. But yes, the show was great. It ended exactly the best way it could have ended. I thought it's actually really touching too to have him be like, well, because you're my friends and I didn't want them to hurt you. And I was like, that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So
despite the fact that he had actually said to Adebayo, like, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah. But like I think it was nice to see that growth of him even not liking what she did. He was still willing to like to save her and possibly doom the world. And the cameo was
funny.
Was hilarious. So that was good. So yes, Peacemaker was a lot of fun for anyone who didn't watch that. And I think that's about it. I mean, I watched Vox Machina. I don't know if anyone else has watched that on Amazon.
I watched the first episode.
Did you? Oh,
yes.
It's so much fun.
Yes.
It's great. I haven't actually, for anyone listening, this is Critical Role. This group did D&D, and then they took their podcast D&D and they made it into a show, or at least based it on. What I've discovered is a lot of the show has the characters from this Critical Role Legend of Vox Machina series, but it's not exactly the same.
It's not the campaign itself. Basically.
It's not the campaign itself. Yes, they took some from it, but they didn't, which is probably good because I almost wanted to listen to it until I realized there's like 300 episodes and each episode's like 4 hours long.
Yes, that's why.
Like I have a life, I can't listen to that.
Yeah.
So
that's why it's much better to play it yourself. Spend 4 hours doing that yourself.
Exactly. So, but yeah, it's great. I'm glad you watched the first episode. I think you should watch all of it. I
definitely will. I'm really intrigued.
It's great. So
it's funny. It's gory. Yes. It's not what I expected from a fantasy show.
Right.
It's like it's supposed to be this kind of merry thing, and you expect it from a D&D, and then it goes so bloody and gory, and you're like, oh, it went that direction. Okay, great. I missed it.
Oh yes, and just wait, it gets bloodier.
I need to start Vox Machina soon.
You should. It's great. It's so much fun. We put it on as a lark, and then the next thing we know, we were like totally hooked. And like I think they just finished it because they were releasing them like kind of like at a weird like 2 or 3 episodes at a time.
Yeah, so we had to, like, Amazon does that. It's really weird.
Yeah, it is super weird.
Have you seen Arcane yet?
Not
no.
Yet.
Oh, it's really good.
What is that on?
It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. Yeah, it's based on League of Legends.
Okay.
About League of Legends before watching, because I know shit about League of Legends, and I love the show.
Yeah. Okay. I think the only thing that I know about League of Legends is Jinx, the character Jinx.
Well, the show's actually Jinx's origin.
Yeah. That's what I've heard.
Huh.
But yeah, I think you would enjoy the show a lot. It's animated. The animations are really cool.
Nice. I'm down for that.
Yeah, I would say maybe the animation is a little bit in similar style to Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun.
I loved Into the Spider-Verse, so.
I am super excited for Into the Spider-Verse too.
I know.
I saw a little bit of a teaser, and I am excited.
Well, what do you have to recommend to us this week?
Well, I haven't really done any new watching lately, except for watching the first episode of Legend of Vox Machina. With the state of the world right now, I just been crawling into my comfort watch.
Yeah, that's fair.
just watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine
Yes.
and Disenchantment and Simpsons, with all the basic things that will make me think happy thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
I've been
fair.
trying to escape into books and stuff, so I
Yeah.
understand the feeling.
Yeah, so yeah, I did finish The House of Little Bones by Beverly Lee,
Yeah.
and it's so good.
That's
It
awesome.
is really, really good. The ending caught me by surprise. I was not anticipating that ending, and it was so like surreal, and it was so nasty. I was like, damn, that fucking person.
Wow.
I'm not gonna say without spoiling anything, but I was like, damn you fucking piece of shit.
Beverly Lee seems so sweet too.
I know. But she can really just, plunge her hand into your heart and just rip it out.
Wow.
She really can.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, I finished that one and I highly recommend it. It's really good. Especially I really loved because I listened to the audiobook and I really liked the narrator. It was really good.
That's
Can't remember
cool.
the name though. That's a little bit of a problem with me and names lately.
I'm glad this one works for you.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
And then I also finished listening to Impact Winter by Travis Beacham.
Oh.
It's I think it's only available on Audible. It's basically a British radio play.
Huh.
But with all the kind of like a 3D immersive thing, like it has music, it has sound effects and everything. So basically, it feels like you're listening to, or if you're listening to a movie but you're not watching it.
That's cool.
And the reason why I decided to listen to it, I was intrigued because well, how does it go again? There's a comet that lands on Earth, and I think it hits the Pacific Ocean. And the destruction is so much that it actually blots out the sun.
Oh.
And it's a little bit into the future. I think it's 2041 or 43 or something like that. And since everything is cast into dark, like eternal darkness and like eternal winter, these creatures emerge from the shadows. And these creatures are what the main protagonist and the rest of the people in the story refer to as vampires.
Interesting.
Ooh.
And I was really intrigued by that. I was like, "Ooh, like a apocalyptic vampire story? Yeah, count me in."
Yes.
But then, as I started listening to it, you guys have you guys had this feeling when you are a little bit angry and you start rage reading or rage watching?
Yes.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
rage
that's been a
listening.
while. Ooh.
Rage listening.
Yeah, because I noticed that this particular play had a lot of ideas that actually are included in my books.
Oh,
Ooh.
interesting.
So yeah, I was a little bit pissed
Huh.
discovering that. I was like, wait, this is actually my idea. And then a little bit further in, oh wait, that's my idea too. And then a little bit more further in, fucking hell, did you take that too?
Oh my gosh, really?
Yep.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to rationalize it in a way, because vampires. It's a common trope. It's a common monster, and there are always going to be like these kind of things. It's not. It's going to be hard to find something original about them, I guess. So I'm trying to lessen my rage by rationalizing like that. But it still hurts though.
Yeah, that's kind of wacky. When did this come out?
2020.
Oh,
Yeah. So I'm like, did you read my books?
yeah. I mean, I will
I'm not gonna accuse anyone or anything.
Right.
It just was my like nagging suspicion, and I'm like, I was trying not. I actually had to take a break from listening to it because I was getting a little bit discouraged from continuing with my series.
Yeah.
But then I was like, no, fuck it, man. I mean, this is a lot of people can write. Everyone's ideas is probably going to be the same, but it's how we execute it is going to be what's different.
Yeah.
And what I discovered after I finished listening to it, that I'm not going to be as conceited that I'm going to say that my books are better. It's not. I'm not that. I have way too low self-esteem to do something like that. But his execution was a little bit different. I mean, yeah, sure, the ideas were the same, but the way he turned the book, or the play basically, is that he decided to go the chosen one trope. Which is so tiring and so lame.
Yeah.
And the main character, her name is Darcy. She's pretty one-dimensional in my opinion. She didn't really have that much of a personality, and everyone kept saying like, "You're the strongest, you're the best," blah blah blah, and you're like, I'm not getting any examples of that.
If we just tell you enough, then you'll believe it.
It was basically that, and I was like, okay, I mean, I know it's a radio play, but can you do a little bit more showing than telling?
Yeah.
So it had these kind of weaknesses. Like it had a weak protagonist. Some of the characters were also a little bit one-dimensional. Like the person that is considered like well, in my books it would be an elder, so like an older vampire, like who's lived through the centuries and is supposed to be more powerful. In his books, it was called the Anointed One or an Overlord. They can't do crap. they're like they don't do much, and I'm like, well, that was a pretty big waste of characters, and okay. And when the main character defeats the big bad one in this story, because I have an inkling they're gonna continue with this play.
Yeah.
It just happened, and there was no struggle at all, and I'm like, okay, that's really bad. It was like really anticlimactic.
Oh, that's lame.
So yeah, I mean, he had good ideas, which were also kind of mine, I guess. Not accusing anyone, of course. But yeah, I felt like the execution he chose. I mean, the premise was really good, and the idea of having it like a post-apocalyptic thing happening was good. But I felt like he could have executed a little bit better.
Yeah.
Like the characters were like meh. You didn't really feel for them at all.
So this is a post-apocalyptic like vampire radio drama, pretty much.
Yeah.
Huh. I like the idea of it. It just doesn't sound that great. Up to your.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, because you're at one point you're put into her perspective, and it's a lot of telling.
Oh.
Yeah.
And you're like, if you're supposed to be in her perspective, you need to let us feel a little bit,
Yeah.
And we don't really get to do that. And at the same time, like I'm probably repeating myself here, but like this thing of her being the strongest and being the chosen one, not getting any examples of that is kind of like, derailing from the original idea of being the chosen one. You kind of have to show how that is possible, At one point, she kind of uses this ability, I think, to shapeshift, and I'm like, wait, no one taught her how to do that? She just did it? So I felt that was like, come on, let her struggle, let her like do mistakes in a like fuck up in some kind of way, like she's trying to shapeshift and then suddenly she turns into a puppy or something. Like do something that is like she doesn't do it like, hey, I'm the best.
Yes, exactly.
It's kind of like what's it called again? The Ray factor.
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of had that.
Mary Sue's only works so much.
Yes.
Where it's like the character needs to struggle and fail and grow.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's so funny that you say it, especially with the shapeshifter thing. And this is like going to be such off the wall, and people aren't, unless you have kids, you might recognize it. But I think there was a movie on Netflix. It's like I can't even remember. It was something or other where all these like wizards like all these people have magic abilities, but then there's like a group of kids that have like crappy abilities. And,
yeah. I know what you're talking about.
And it's kind of like what you're talking about, because one of the characters is a shapeshifter, but they keep and supposed to be kind of the lead character for this group, and they keep failing in shapeshifting, and eventually they have to like learn to control it or like know how to do it. And it's like, this silly kids movie figured it out. Like, and again, no offense to this person, but like, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, it's easy to show us somebody shapeshifting and failing, and then eventually either having somebody teach them or them through perseverance figure out how to shapeshift properly.
Yeah, I think probably one of the problems with it, because it's a radio drama, you can't really focus on just that one person.
Yeah.
So it had to bounce between a lot of characters. Like it bounced. You had to kind of like go through the life of this the main character's sister, who was kind of left behind, and she has to struggle for herself. And to be honest, I actually liked her arc better than the MC's, and that's really a problem if you like side characters a little bit more than the MC.
Yeah.
And you want them to succeed a lot more than the MC. You're like, that might not be a good thing.
How long is it?
It's about 4 hours.
Okay.
No, it's actually 3 hours, because when I finished listening to it during my walk, daily walks basically, and usually the walks take me about 45 minutes, and I had like I think 1 hour and 9 minutes left when I started, and I hadn't even finished the walk, and it was like I checked what was left, and it was 18 minutes of just doing the end credits.
Holy cow!
Wow.
Because it's a radio drama, they had to like list every single fucking episode.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's all the same people. Why? What? Why can't you just be like, from episode 1 to episode 10, these old people did this?
Yeah, seriously. Well, and it's funny, and the reason I was wondering that, and even to go to what you're talking about, the broader topic of your story and this story, there was, and I think they still sort of are doing this podcast or touches of it, but very similar idea of what you're talking about. So there was a podcast called We're Alive. I don't know if you ever heard of this, zombie survival radio drama, kind of like you said. And, it's like it was like 15-minute episode or parts to each chapter. Anyway, really long. But what's interesting to cover both of these things is that came out, now it's kind of questionable, but that came out probably like a year before the Walking Dead show came out. Now I know the comics were out for a while, but somewhat similar concept of people surviving a zombie apocalypse. In We're Alive, they end up surviving through, like, they get some time in like this big apartment building tower kind of thing, and other things happen, where obviously Walking Dead is just whatever you want to call it. But kind of like, but it's just interesting kind of thinking about what you're saying with like vampires and this kind of thing. And I always thought that at the same time then too, where I was like, oh, there's this really cool, I mean, I was hooked to this We're Alive. It ran for like 2 or 3 years, and then they ended it, and then they have like some side ones. But just the idea of like these people surviving a zombie thing, and then they have like this other group that they have to fight against, and then like, at least in this one, because I've only seen the first season of Walking Dead, so I have no idea where it's at now or what happens now. But like, the zombies in We're Alive, sort of like we had to laugh when we watched Army of the Dead. I think it was Army of the Dead, whatever the Zack Snyder one is.
Yeah, that's the one.
We had to laugh when we watched it, and he had to have listened to We're Alive, because We're Alive has these smart zombies that sort of talk, and they have their own society. And then when we watched Army of the Dead, we're like, wait a minute. It feels like they stole this exact same idea.
Yeah.
So that's what this episode's about. People stealing other people's ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly.
Well,
No, we're not libeling or saying anyone actually did. We're just
No.
speculating.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Our cover story does not have
No.
stolen idea.
This one
No.
does not at
Which
all.
I think would be a good segue to get into Sweetgrass Blood
Oh yes.
Yes. Good call.
by
Good,
Eden
good
Royce.
segue.
And I typically, when I recommend a story to us, it's a story I've read before. I've never read this story before, but I've read Eden Royce. So I figure, like, oh, her story is really good. Let's give this a go. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think, because it wasn't what I was expecting it to be.
No, it wasn't.
That was like I was gonna ask you why you picked this.
I picked it because I wanted to highlight Eden Royce, and I
Perfect.
hadn't read this story before, but I've read her other short fiction before, and her stuff's really good.
Yes. Okay. Cool.
That was my thought process behind picking this. I wanted something that was new to me as well as new to you.
Perfect.
So that way we'd have like a fresh reaction to something. Instead of me being like, oh, I love this story. And that being like, well, about and then May's like, I'm kind of in the middle.
Well, I will say my question was not accusatory for this one. I actually really enjoyed it and was just wondering where you found it from. Like, I mean, I know where you found it, Nightmare Magazine and everything like that, but just wondering what brought you to it. But no, I've deep.
I've read her before and I like her stuff a lot.
Yeah, she's got, I mean, just even without talking about the story, which we'll get into in a second, but just her style is like awesome in this.
Yes, it's really poetic.
Yes. I was especially, fair enough, when we get to the section called the poet. That's what like really where it kind of like hit, which was very well a choice probably, but it like I'll just say, like, reading that even just a couple times and I'm looking at it right now, it's just the style there is just it's just very poetic.
It's also it's not only just poetic, it's really like visually appealing as well. I mean, I definitely, as I was reading it, I could picture myself just sitting next to those two people and just seeing everything happening before them.
Just picking skin off your foot.
Yep. Yeah. Crushing street grass in your under your palm.
Yeah. Having a pen to write down some spells in.
Yes. Yeah. But it, to go with that, it's very textured. Like you feel and can see and hear. There's a very descriptive style to everything in this, and like you can read it and close your eyes and picture everything. There's no, it's just this like living words here is the best way for me to describe it, because it's just her detail is, even the story's short, it's like 2,600 words.
Yeah,
but the
it
detail
packs a punch.
Yes, it packs a punch, and the details and everything. It just she knew exactly what words to put to give you an exact detail of, like I said, picking skin off of your foot, and like you can see the fresh pink skin underneath it and everything like that.
Just the opening line also just really brought my attention, like to like 100%. I blotted the blood from my braids. Yeah. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what just happened?
Yeah. By the way, unrelated to this, but I'm looking at this on Nightmare Magazine, and their cover for issue 113 is this giant spider and this little kid talking to the spider, and it's absolutely horrifying. But anyway, we'll go back. I'm just looking at it as I'm looking at this, and I'm like, God, that is just horrifying.
I can't escape it. Wait, I had to scroll down. Okay, there I go.
Yeah. So who is brave enough to try to describe what happens in this? Like, for a non-spoilery talk, even though this is free and it's 2,600 words, we can at least give a fair, unspoilered description real quick.
Ooh,
how do you describe this story?
That's a doozy.
Yeah.
We have two characters, the Weaver and the Poet.
Yeah.
And both of them dabble in, I guess you could say, witchcraft or folk magic.
Yeah.
The Weaver is a character who seems to be more aggressive in
Yes.
how they view the worlds and their powers.
Yeah.
And the Poet is a character who is more sympathetic and trying to understand the power. And it's kind of a fight over control between the Weaver and the Poet.
Yeah, and especially to add to that, like because she's the poet, she either she or spirits seek her.
Yes.
Yes.
Like
And
in a way that that she is kind of like a vessel for them to come to in order for their stories to be heard.
Oh, I
That's-
like that.
I feel like that's how I got from it. At least when I was reading it, I was like, oh, okay.
yeah, I mean, it seemed like they were seeking her out
Yeah.
as the Poet.
Yes. Okay. Yep. Yep. Well, I congratulate both of you. That was really good description. What I should say is that is not to disparage a story. It's just it's it's a story that's tough to describe.
Because of this, because it's so visceral and it's also so poetic.
Yeah.
I think that it kind of like without going into huge ass spoilers, it's
Yeah.
hard to come up with like a small plot summary of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and we can jump into that, but just before and I think we've all said it. It's really good. It's definitely worth checking out. It's going to take you 15 minutes maybe of your time, maybe 10 just to read this. It's free, Nightmare Magazine. Just read it. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think it would also put you in a little bit of a different perspective. I mean, given that it's still Black History Month, I think this is definitely worth a read.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
this episode's going to come out during Women in Horror Month. So it's also a good segue from one to the other.
Yes.
Look at that. See how smart you are? You got this sucker like great, like just push us right into the next month.
Perfect.
It's not just a hat rack, my friend.
But this store was really fantastic.
Yes.
And it's just, I think that we should just dive into spoilers because there's no other way to talk about it than to ruin it.
I think we have to.
I need to check out more of her stuff. I know she has a middle grade novel out now.
I saw that, and I was like, ooh, I want to read that.
And she has 2 short story collections out. So.
Oh, also, before I forget, before we dig into tea, it's also in Sycorax's Daughters.
Yes.
What was it? 28 dark stories and 14 poems written by African American women writers. Came out in 2017. I'm looking on Amazon right now, and the Kindle version is $5.99. Paperback's $21.99. So maybe you should check that out too.
And I will say I haven't read that anthology, but the lineup for that anthology is really impressive.
Yeah, seriously, it's stacked.
So I mean, like, just gonna put that out there. The anthology itself has a lot of really great writers, and give it a try.
Yeah,
support good work.
Exactly. Okay, so now we can get into it. Yeah, so I was trying to figure out it, especially when we get to the end, was the Weaver capturing people, magical people like the Poet?
I think she was a spirit.
The Poet was the spirit?
No, the Weaver.
The Weaver was the spirit.
I think the Weaver was this. Well, the way I kind of saw it is a bit of both. I saw the Weaver being the one who's kind of like being guided by spirits, and kind of like not really being guided by, I should say. But yeah, the Weaver. Yeah. Either way, the Weaver, whoever the Weaver is trying to get to the Poet.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I'm wondering too for that, because it seems like so they could both hear voices, but like the last paragraph of the Weavers, it seems more like the voices are trying to protect her from the Poet for some, but she's kind of like, that's fine. I want her to come. And then especially when we get to the very end, it's like, well, yeah, because she just weaved her into a basket.
I think, well, this is my interpretation, so it might be a completely different from what Eden was coming forth here. But I feel like I said, it says like in this paragraph, voices of those gone from here came to me amongst the residents, and they're like they're warning her, saying to the Weaver that she shouldn't be summoning the poet. And I feel like the reason why they don't want her to summon the poet is because they feel like the poet hasn't been doing as good of a job of relaying their stories to other people. Because as he said, like they have been relying on telling their story like verbally, with songs and with like incantations and stuff, and they probably feel that putting it on paper is kind of like defiling it.
Oh,
I can see
makes
that makes sense to me.
Right?
Yeah.
And then but the Weaver has kind of like gone sick of it, and she's like, I don't care. Just let her come and I'll show her what I can do.
Yeah. Well, especially, and I was trying to figure out the very beginning, the fact that she did she murder somebody?
She did, yep.
Okay. Was that to get some of the power?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
okay. Blood magic.
Okay, good. Because I was kind of like you read it, and he would read that first sentence with the blood, and then she's talking about like her basket's large enough to hold a head, and I'm like, wait, what now? And it's like, what's happening? But yeah, I like that, because I was, especially the second and kind of third time looking through it, you can kind of get the idea of like the poet isn't doing is exactly what you're saying. It isn't doing what they're supposed to be, and everyone's been calling the poet to have the poet, I guess, tell their stories, but she just, I guess, maybe is just using them for her own papers. And so then the Weaver's like, well, you're not good, so I'm going to capture you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Something like that. Yeah, it was I really liked it, but yeah, it's really tricky to kind of figure out what's happening.
I think you can kind of get clues from it a little bit, through the perspective of the poet. Like here, when she hears the sound of the stick pounding.
Yeah.
And she avoids it.
Yeah.
Because she knew that when she had answered them and written something down, they didn't like it, and so she's kind of trying to avoid that from happening again. But she can't avoid it because they're always going to be surrounding her, because that's what's in her blood.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too to talk about that, because I'm looking at that paragraph where she's talking about being, whenever they needed her or wanted her, either for an errand or stalking, like that was, is it because she can write down?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay, but then actually once they got her, then she actually probably fed more of whatever they were thinking, because I think specifically that stalking, that's what kind of is calling me out. So like whoever's stalking somebody else, but then the poet comes in and like doubles down on whatever this stalking is.
Yeah, it could have been like, I think it can also be viewed as that, but also I think it's just like she's not putting it in the words that they want her to do.
Yeah.
Because she's writing it so that everyone can follow it. Like she's not doing it in their own way. She's doing it in the common way, basically.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Well, and it's interesting too, is because they like enter her. She doesn't enter them. I thought that was intriguing.
I think it's because she had answered them. This is how I think this goes now into this kind of possession thing. Like if you let someone in the first time, the door is always going to be open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so her door is open for people to enter?
Yes.
Okay.
So she's like the vessel for all the spirits to go to.
Yes.
To tell their story. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually.
Yeah. Interesting. And that's also, yeah, because then I was wondering that too, especially when, so does she, so what I'm trying to also figure out is because we get she's sticking her head in the sink, and it seems like the way to push her to wherever, because it seems like she moves. Like she's not in her house there. She's in this other house. And the reason I'm thinking, because of the baskets. She sees a bunch of baskets there.
I feel like in this case, because this is where it gets tricky. I feel like with the Weaver, because she put this kind of blood magic, I feel like she managed to pull her through her time.
Okay.
And that's how she ended up in the Weaver's house.
Okay.
That's why she sees all the baskets, and she's like, okay, so I'm here and I have to do this job for her now. But then she, then the ending comes and we're like, oh, nope, that's not what she wanted.
No. Yeah, because it's like because then you kind of realize that she's got the Weaver in there, because the Weaver's kind of like talking to her, and she can feel the Weaver above her and everything like that. And it even seems like she knew. And that's what is interesting too. It's because she kind of knows what the Weaver's house is like, because she knows where the roll of paper is and everything. Just is like, really interesting.
Yeah. You can kind of get these kind of clues, like I said, that they are not satisfied with how she's putting down their stories. Like you see in this paragraph here, only the ink took away their voices. Maybe I had noticed, but the emptiness of being cut off from everyone I had loved, those who had died for me, was too much, and I put away the revelation. So you kind of get this kind of clue that putting it down on paper is not the same as being told from the perspective of those people.
Yeah. Well, especially, too, when she's just writing at one point, and it's just everything that she remembers. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, you can also see it here in another paragraph. Like, we have never been a people to write things down. We, a mishmash of African and Black Carib, lived by our voices, songs, and tales, and they had kept us alive, had kept us apart from the outside. But because she had gone to the outside to write everything down through the words of, either on paper or word processor or digital recorders, that's basically what the spirits were not happy about.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Crazy.
And then you can see how they get pissed. Like, it was for that, and only that they'd kill.
Yes.
You can also sense their frustration to the poet as that section continues.
Yes.
Especially with the whole, like, our blood flows in you, our pain, our sacrifices made you what you are. How dare you? How dare you deny us?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, okay, that's a good question. She's denying them their story?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, she's denying them their way of telling the story.
Yeah. Like I said, they've been brought up like their entire lives to do it verbally, to go from one person to another, from one generation to another, always verbally. And then she stepped out of that tradition basically and broke it by putting it on paper and by not. And usually, because she's a poet, she would probably, beautify it, or put things out of perspective just to make it work as a poem or work as a tale.
Yeah.
So it kind of skewed what they wanted everyone else to be like to hear.
Interesting. Okay.
I especially love the sentence here, like that basically the spirits say, your paper won't save you.
Yep.
Yes.
And that was a Weaver who said that. She was like, nope, we're done with this shit.
Yeah, it wasn't. She's like, I know the Weaver's voice by now, although her weighted rasp was always accompanied by others long dead, some whispering in the chewy sounding gullah, some shrieking in dagger-sharp Creole. There was no need to look up, as I knew she was there above me, shadowy and dim, but as real as the screeches, the screams. Her scent was salt, from sweat and from the ocean where her bones lay.
Interesting. Is the screams, I'm wondering, and I could be wrong, but all the screams and voices, is that because she's been weaving them into baskets? Is that why they're with her?
I mean, that's a good possibility, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wondering. And again, that's just because when we get to the end and we realize what's happening.
I just love the fact also because her basically like the poet's doom was to write everything down, and they would not let her go. They would like, you're gonna write everything down until your bones break.
Yes.
Because this is what you've been doing to our stories the entire time, and this is gonna be your doom.
It's so crazy.
I loved that. It was amazing.
Well, then especially too when you get to the point where she spills the ink on it, and it just like covers it all up, all of her work.
Yeah.
Yes. And you also feel her despair when it happens, because the ink was the only thing that kind of made it work, and everything else didn't work.
Yeah.
You also feel her tiredness and her exhaustion too.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Like she just wants to be done with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like they will not let her go.
Nope.
Yes.
No matter how hard she tries.
It wasn't until the last part when her finger touches the paper and it leaves like a signature on it, and it's like, you're done.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that because it's so subtle, but just tells you like that those 3 words, like a signature, that gives you exactly what they needed from her.
Yep.
Kind of like that agreement to be like, okay, now you can take me.
But that ending, man, holy shit.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the Weaver caught up with her.
Yep, it did. It was just it's just a little small paragraph, but that is enough just to be like, well, that was a gut punch.
Yes.
Not sure if she deserved it, but damn.
Well, and it's cool because it mirrors the beginning of the story of like it's specifically how the Weaver's fingers work and how the sweetgrass like bends but doesn't break, and using the spoon. It's just like she almost just mirrors what's happening, and but now you're seeing, and that's what I'm wondering too, if that's the basket she was weaving at the beginning of the story was somebody else, and this is another person, or another kind of spirit that's getting weaved into this basket.
It's like I said, that's why I feel like it kind of transcends time.
Yeah.
You're like you're at 2 timelines basically at the same time. It kind of it made me remember how it was with the Ballad of Black Tom. It kind of felt like we were in that kind of like time shift.
Yes, exactly. I really like that because you could like, it's like definitely kind of these 2 different planes and things happening there. Crazy. Yeah, this was a really good story.
It was really good.
It was a blind pick for me, so I'm glad you guys all enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna check out her more. Like I said, I love coming across these kind of news stories, and I'm like, I might have to eventually put up a goddamn Excel spreadsheet just to keep up with what I need to read.
Seriously, yeah, because I would love to read some more from her because this was really cool.
Well, speaking of setting up an Excel spreadsheet, I have picked out our story for our next Abyss episode.
You have?
I have.
Uh-oh.
It is a novella.
Okay.
By Mary Sangiovanni.
Nice.
Called For Emmy.
Oh.
Okay.
I don't think I've heard of this one.
It is actually the very first thing I read by Mary Sangiovanni.
Nice. Okay.
It is a fantastic piece of cosmic horror.
Ooh. We're keeping up with that. I like that.
Yes. Yeah, we are.
I feel like this will also be a good gateway into. We have no guest set up for the first episode of March, but the rest of March will be guested by a few people I've picked out. And we finalize dates, and we have some surprises in store for the audience.
Yay! Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to getting these guests on. I'm also looking forward to. Have you ever read Mary Sangiovanni, Vitlame?
Nope. I'm like I said, no, I haven't, because I'm such a beginner when it comes to horror. So yeah.
Have you read her before, Matt?
Yeah, I read Thrall a little while ago, and that was awesome.
I think the best way to describe Mary Sangiovanni for someone who's ever read her, she writes her stories are pretty much Silent Hill meets H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. I'm excited. I'm excited.
That's very accurate. Yeah, I love Thrall, and in fact I saw she's actually working on a sequel to that, so I'm excited to see where that goes. But that's awesome. For Emma,
for Emmy.
Emmy. I don't know where I got Emma. Close enough. YA.
It's for Emmy. You can get it on Amazon for like $2.99 for the Kindle version.
Nice.
So it's a cheap buy, and it's like I said, it's the very first thing I read from her. I still have the magazine it was in. It was in the Thunderstorm magazine.
Oh,
Wow.
The few remnants of older Thunderstorm stuff I have.
Crazy.
But it is a great novella, and I'm excited to talk about it.
nice.
Sweet.
Vitlame, where can listeners get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me on Twitter at VitlimeS, and they can also see my indie horror book reviews on BookTube at Fanged Pipsqueak Reads, though I still have to kind of figure out how I'm gonna film everything now that I'm still adjusting to my routine, but I will work that. That will work itself out.
Yeah.
And I'm also on Book Talk at VitlimeMist.
Perfect. And Matt, what about you?
I am on Twitter at BrandonBergDM.
Awesome. And you can follow me on Twitter at Rudy53088. Be sure to follow our podcast with @Into Staring. And just give us some reviews and recommendations on the different platforms we're on. Everything helps spread our podcast around. And we want to make sure we take Abyss to the next level this year. And this is Richard Gerlach saying keep staring.